chat box instead of unmuting them. That's perfectly fine. But here's our word. And right now we want to think about what is the part of speech. So what kind of word is it? And then thinking about the definition before we move into our other pieces of information. Does anyone recognize or know this word motive? All right. You guys are a little quiet tonight. That's okay. So let's take a look then. So when we look up motive in kind of our basic dictionary, it tells us that it's a noun. Okay. So motives, part of speech is a noun, which means it represents a person, place, thing, animal, idea. And I would say motive is kind of one of what we could probably call like an abstract thing. Good. Thanks, Kristlyn. Yep, good. So motive is a reason for doing something. Exactly. And if we look at the definition in here, we also want to talk about how if it's a motive, it's not just a reason, but it's kind of like an inner, kind of internal. I'm like internal motivator, but that's exactly the same word. Yeah. So here it says some inner drive, impulse, or intention that causes a person to do something or act in a certain way. So you're definitely on a good track with your definition, Kristlyn, to where it is the cause for some kind of action or decision. And we want to talk about how it kind of comes more from an individual person inside rather than, I mean, you could still kind of have motives that are out. Not really. It's more internal, I guess is what we would say. Um, so good. So a related word to motive is the word motif, which is right here. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that term, but um, abraxas. I don't know, that's quite the word. Sorry, I'm like, oh, what? Significance found on charms and amulets. Oh, it's like magic. Okay, let's look at our word though. Sorry, before I get distracted. And so in our more straightforward dictionary, we see once again that motive is a noun. And just like you said, it's something that causes a person to act in a certain way or do a certain thing. So we can think of it as an incentive. Now, motive can also kind of be the end goal behind the action. So it can be kind of the reason for the actions, but it could also be used to refer to kind of the goal that you're hoping to get from the actions, which of course relates to the fact that hopefully it just makes sense to you guys, but I'm so sorry. It's like sleepy. Good. So hopefully you guys are getting a good sense of what the word means. So you want to say something like, and so yeah, so we would say a motive is a person's inner drive to take an action or make a decision. Kristen, did you come up with that definition on your own? Did you look it up? Because my next question would be, yeah, if you guys did recognize the word, where would you have heard or encountered this word? Like in what kind of category or genre would you potentially find this term, motive? So, I mean, for me, the place I hear this word the most is like if you've ever watched a lot of like crime, even like true crime or like crime dramas. Oh, okay, from a previous conversation. Good, yeah. So you might have heard it on TV, you might have heard it from other people, but when we want to know the cause for an action or a decision, we are asking for that person's motive. Okay. And we learn from the origin of the word motive that it is related to the word motion, like moving, right? But you can see here that it means serving to move or moved. And so, right, your motive is what is kind of internally moving you to, right, take action or make decisions. Okay. So there are a few good alternative forms of the word here. Well motived. Okay. Um, and I think we looked at this, but this is an adjective. And one of the important things to know about this term is that when you use well as a prefix, like well done or well known or well established, okay, you start it with the well, and then you use a hyphen to connect it to the word to make the adjective. Okay. So you might see some questions that might ask you to know that adjectives that start with well have a hyphen. Okay. Um, Other forms of the word. So hopefully you guys are seeing how motive is related to the verb, right? Motivate. Okay. So motivate, right, is a verb. It's an action, right? And so if we are trying to give someone a motive, right, then we would want to motivate them. Okay. And then you guys are probably familiar, right, with, whoopsie, right, the noun form of the verb motivation. Okay. Does anyone have a sense of if motive is a noun and motivation is a noun, are they the same thing? Do you guys think they're the same idea, or do you think there's a reason why we would use motive in one situation and motivation in another? Does anyone feel like there's a difference in meaning between those two words? We were talking about it in class yesterday morning when we were looking at this word. And so, like I said, usually a motive is more like an individual situation, right? And so what was the specific motive for that choice or action? Hi, Brandon, welcome. Um, um, So, but whereas motivation might be more of like an overall thing, but I think they're pretty close in meaning. So of course we have other terms like, oops, motiveless. What do you guys think motiveless means? Any thoughts there? And when we add that less suffix to our words, we make another adjective. So it's a descriptive word. Any ideas? Is if we describe a situation or an action or an outcome as motivationless, less motive. Yeah, and it's not really even less here. Less basically means without. And so if we feel like someone is doing something without any motive, is that good? Is that bad?
It's motilex.
Danny, I'm sorry.
It sounds like opposite.
So I can hear you.
Opposite with
Mm-hmm.
yeah, opposite.
Yep. It basically means you're without a motive. So if we describe something as motiveless, we're either saying like we can't understand how anyone could do this, right? So it's like a really tragic, awful thing, right? We would like there's almost like no explanation. Nothing makes sense to us, right? As far as a motive. So we would say it seemed like a motiveless crime, right? Why would someone murder this person, or why would someone steal from this church, or like, so it's like, what, there's not, unfortunately, right, when some crime occurs or some actions are taken, right, they make sense. Other times, if they feel so strange, right, then we might want to so yeah, when we use less as a suffix like this, we're not meaning like, we had this much, now we have less. It literally means without. Okay, right? If you're careless, right, you're doing things without care, right? Usually we wouldn't say if someone was being kind of careless, um, we might say it, but generally, right? Or what are some other words? Fearless, right? Means without fear, even though probably no one's 100% fearless. So, but yeah, so our word less is going to be more like without, like Danny was saying, it's going to basically be the opposite, it turns the word into the opposite. So. All right, let's think about some synonyms. So we already saw some in our definition. So we could use words like drive, not necessarily the verb drive, right? But someone's, once again, right? Their drive, what other words did we see? Impulse, intention, right? I think intention is a really good synonym because once again, generally people have reasons for what they do for the most part. And so of course, what is your intention behind this? What is your motive for doing this? Let's see if the thesaurus can give us any other useful synonyms for our word. Oop. So we get words like aim. Here we see impulse. Influence, once again, like for me, it feels a little too outside, whereas I feel like motive is more inside. But rationale is another word we could use. Grounds, kind of like that word. Um, Stimulus, root, spring, the spur. Um, So words like passion and rationale can be kind of flavors of motive, right? If you feel like your decisions are happening out of emotion, right? We might call that your passion, right? I was impassioned, right? Filled with so much emotion that I acted. Whereas rationale is kind of your thinking behind something. So it's kind of the logic side versus the emotion side. Um, okay. Any questions so far? Hopefully this feels like a pretty common and useful word. Let's see what it looks like if we were going to search. And so, of course, it looks like there's quite a few companies called Motive, but we want more of like let's see what the icons look like. So all of these icons for Motive are kind of showing, once again, right? It's kind of this internal thing, this internal drive within us that is helping us do hopefully what we want to do. Um, uh-oh. Noun. What does that mean? Uh, yeah, these are not quite what I wanted. Let's see. Sometimes illustrations look better. Oh, I like that picture, but it doesn't really help us know what motive is. Um, I'm not quite sure why she's like jogging with an arrow. Kind of like this picture, right? It's kind of that inner person within you. Sorry. There we go. Copy. You're no So yeah, I like that picture for our motive. And so um so go ahead and please write your own sentence using the term motive, okay? And once you have your sentence, please, if you wouldn't mind sharing it in the chat. But here would, oops, forgot. There we go. Possessive. Whose motive? The looters. All right, so my sentence, desperation and hunger were the looters' motive when they robbed the store. Okay. So trying to kind of, right, justify their actions. But go ahead and write your own sentence. Please, like I said, share it out in the Zoom chat once you have it written out, okay? And that way I'll know that everyone's got their sentence as well. Excuse me. Get your sentence using the word motive, Brandon? Okay, thanks, Chrislyn. Figure out what was the motive of the murder, or what we'd probably want to say what was the murderer's motive, but I mean, yeah, if they're kind of at the beginning, they might not know. I've been watching too much Elsbeth. But yeah, very nice, Kristen. Thank you for sharing. I'll let the rest of you guys, please, once again, let's get some more motive sentences, but exactly, right? Any detective story, any kind of crime drama like that, right? If we can figure out the motive, then we might be able to figure out who the person is who did the deed. Anyone else got a sentence they're willing to share? I'll try to be patient. Okay. What was the motive for the crime? Beautiful, Taylor. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? There we go. There's another one. We don't just have to talk about crimes, right? We can speculate, right, about other motives. So, of course, with Halloween just a couple of days away, thank you. My motive for finishing. Beautiful. Thank you, Alyssa. Very nice. Um, Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. All right. Any final questions or thoughts or concerns about this word, how we kind of gather information about the word, how that helps us understand what we're talking about, kind of thing? There's ghosts knocking stuff off my walls. Yeah, very nice. Very nice, Susanna. Yeah, what was the motive for starting that job? Yeah, you can always ask people what their motive was. Okay. Um, Probably better than assuming you know what their motive was, although we probably do that a lot too. So thank you. Excellent work, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your sentences. You're welcome to keep putting them in the chat. All right. So, all right. Let's hop into our lesson. Um, and maybe this thing's always gets, there we go. Gets a little chuggy. All right. Does anyone on Zoom need the PDF version of the lesson to look at? I can grab the link, but I know we've been working on it since last week. So, um, I think most all of you guys are continuing from there. So, but if you want the link to the materials, you can. And of course, if you want a hard copy, you could come either here where I am, or if you're closer to the Page campus, they could print one for you there as well. And um, Brandon, maybe when I get the next one, I almost have the next one done, so I'll try to make sure I mail them to you. Let me write it down because I keep doing that. No, bummer. I'm sorry about that. Is probably the wind and the weather isn't helping. Okay, got two things written down, but thanks for hanging in there with us, Brandon. Okay, so I think everyone, like I said, has been with us. So I think you know where we're at and what we're talking about here with Unit 4. So we're working on, right, how do we show illustrations and how do we use descriptions in our writing and how do we, deal with them in our text? So what is the relationship? Okay. And so we started off by specifically looking at our illustration words. And of course, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Um, yeah, there was snow in the park this morning when I walked the dog. Um, So we started by looking at illustrations, and those are our specific examples, okay? And so hopefully everyone agrees that it's useful to, right, use examples to support any ideas that we're trying to express. So if we look at the first example here, right, by using this term last week, for instance, right, it makes clear what happened is one example of the claim here that I am very absent-minded. Now, you guys have been my students for a good while, so you probably already know that about me. But hopefully that makes sense of how we use the signal words to signal that we're going to provide a specific example to support whatever we're saying. So illustration words indicate that we're providing an example, and the purpose of providing the example is to develop, right? Add more to it and potentially clarify, okay? So we talked a lot about how, right, with definitions, if you can give a specific example or two as part of your definition, right, that should develop the idea more and make it clearer to your readers, okay? So at the bottom of page 1 is kind of our basic terms that allow us to show illustrations. We looked at how we use them in sentences. So generally, once again, we start out by making kind of a claim or a main idea sentence and then following it with a signal and then our specific examples. Okay. So I think everyone's feeling good about that. We then began to look at our first kind of text pattern. And so we have talked about how there is such a thing as a descriptive text, but description and examples get sprinkled in through almost all of our text types. So usually there's something else kind of at play that we're using description and examples, to support and clarify, develop and clarify. So we looked at this definition pattern where, right, we begin with a definition and then follow it with a few examples, maybe follow it with an explanation sentence, but then clear examples that show it in action in the real world, okay? And of course, signaled, okay? So I think everyone's feeling good. So we talked about other ways that we can help to develop and support the definition of a word. In addition to examples, we can use explanations, right? Just giving more detail and description characteristics. We can make some kind of comparison to something familiar, or we might help strengthen the definition by saying what it's not or trying to make like a distinction about the word from some related ideas. Kind of like what we were just talking about, right? With what is motive, not that motivation is, or vice versa. Okay. So I think everyone did a good job of recognizing that. Okay. From there, we began to once again just kind of dig in more to that idea of we either have a sentence that's going to present a main idea versus sentences that contain details, explanations, examples, all of those supporting pieces that we're going to call supporting idea details. So we have the main idea and what supporting details should we add to support and develop that main idea. Okay. So we talked about if we're looking for specific information, scanning is a good reading strategy or technique to use. Okay, and we practice that. And so the technique here is to look at the question so you know what information you need. Find some keywords in the question that should match up with the text. And so, of course, for question 1, 1880 is what I'm going to scan for first, and I need to find money associated with that. So it can go pretty fast if you start with the questions and use that to inform what you're looking for. Okay, you might not have a complete picture of the text, but if the job is to answer questions about the details, don't necessarily need to know it. Okay, so then we went ahead and looks like, all right, looks like we found where we're at. I feel like we did we do page 8 on Thursday? Does anyone remember? I'm sorry, I feel like we did.
We got to page 15.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you, Crystal. I'm like, I don't know what happened, but maybe I didn't save. So I was like, wait a minute. Yes, that's right. That's right. Okay. Thank you so much for helping me. Oh, that's right. We left off on our Malaysia flag. Okay, let's look at page 13. Okay. And so we have kind of our text relationships, illustration and description. One of the text structures that we might encounter is that definition type paragraph, but another type, and this is a little bit more of a clear descriptive picture or paragraph or text. And of course, this one we would probably call it more of a spatial description in that, it's kind of using the language to describe something that has a lot of features. Okay. And so, if we look here, 3 adjectives that describe the flag in the opening 2 sentences. So we get famous, beautiful, and colorful, for our adjectives there. 2 phrases that tell where the blue rectangle is. So with our spatial descriptions, we're describing, like a flag or a thing. Oftentimes it's like a room or a location, which we'll get to very shortly. And so we have to use a lot of these, what we call prepositional phrases to make sure that it's clear, where the different parts of the thing you're describing are. Now here it's easy for us because we also have, the image. But if we only had the paragraph, the author would have to, use this much detail so that hopefully we could picture in our mind what exactly the flag of Malaysia looks like. We get more kind of prepositional phrases telling us where, and then descriptive words. Okay. So if you kind of see a text, right, that's telling us how something is laid out and kind of moving us through different parts, using lots of adjectives to describe things and a lot of prepositional phrases to orient us, usually mostly in space, sometimes in time, but we're not working on chronological anymore. So hopefully that felt good. So if we jump to our outline, I think everyone got it filled out, but you can kind of see, maybe, okay, that our text begins with the topic sentence, which is our main idea, okay? And then you can see for the main idea about just basically describing the flag and explaining how it's a famous symbol of the country Malaysia, the author created what they're calling here supporting ideas. And so supporting ideas are um kind of the subcategories of the main idea. So if we're going to describe the flag, then we need to start right by oh yeah, that's right. We've got the lines up here. Oops. So hopefully everyone's remembering how this kind of works. So just using those phrases. So the supporting ideas are kind of one aspect of the topic of the main idea. And then the detail is right where we get very specific. So if we're going to say the flag is beautiful and colorful, well, what colors are there? There's 4 colors. Okay. And then next, right, the next thing that they focus on is the stripes. Then the blue rectangle, right? So you can kind of see how it's different aspects of the flag become the supporting idea, and then our detail gives more. All right. Um, so hopefully that's making sense, kind of the different layers. Okay. So on page 15, there are 3 passages here. And so go ahead and see if you can read the text and answer the questions based on the text, okay? So go ahead and try that out. If you are working off of my screen, let me know when I need to move to the next text, okay? So for number 1, what is the topic? What is the main idea? Hopefully everyone feels good about those kind of different layers, right? The topic is the specific thing that we're talking about. The main idea is really the author's take on that topic, okay? And then 3 facts that support it, okay? So I'm gonna let you guys work on that for a sec. Like I said, just do 1, 2, and 3. If you get to 4, that's great. But at least just do 1, 2, and 3 for now for sure. And we'll talk about check-in, okay? All right. I'm gonna be right back. You guys need a few more minutes still? All right, you guys ready to talk about these two texts on this page, hopefully? All right, who can tell me yes or no? Do dogs have a strong sense of taste?
No.
Good. I agree. Thank you guys. Good. And we know that, right? The author claims that immediately in that first sentence of the paragraph. So, how do we know this? How do they help us know? What three facts do we get that help us know that dogs do not have a strong sense of taste? They eat poop and lick their butt. Oh, wait, that's not in the text. So first we get this idea that studies show, okay, so that's really good solid evidence, right? So we'd say humans taste is 5 times. Like I said, this must have been an interesting experiment. I'm not quite sure if they fed humans and dogs food and how they asked the dog, like, did you taste that? Anyway, maybe it probably has to do with like hooking them up to all those like brain machines. All right. However, dogs have a super sense of smell. Dogs get more information from their sense of smell than from their sense of taste, scientists say. So once again, really trying to show that this is a scientifically studied kind of issue. Okay. So So we get some kind of what we would call statistics, right? With facts 1 and 3. And then, we use terms like, right? Well, if they don't have a strong sense of taste, then what do they have, right? So if we once again think about that definition about like saying what it is not, they kind of do that in this paragraph, right? So when they say what it is, we know what it is. So hopefully your guys' answers look similar to this. Did you guys find the 3 facts about that support this idea that no, dogs don't have a strong sense of taste? Wow. Why I'm trying to drink out of my thermos. Okay. All right, let's look at paragraph 3. Okay. Animals that eat plants usually have a very selective sense of taste. One example is that cows are very careful about which plants they eat. The fields where they eat contain many types of plants, and cows have to avoid the harmful ones. The koala, a furry Australian animal that lives in trees, has precise senses of smell and taste. A koala can detect different chemicals in different trees. It eats only leaves of eucalyptus trees, but it can also eat from certain individual trees. But it also eats only from certain individual trees. So there's only one kind of tree they like, and then I guess even then they're like, yeah, that eucalyptus is a little off, so I'm gonna go eat the good one over here. uh, Kind of interesting. And then because humans eat both plants and meat, our sense of taste is somewhat selective. So I'm not quite sure exactly I mean, I guess they're saying we eat a more wide variety of foods as far as selective. I'm not quite sure. But not as much as that of animals that eat only plants. So because we kind of have a wider, I guess, diet than those types of animals. So do animals that eat plants often have a selective sense of taste? What do we answer there? Yes or no? Well, I mean, the
Yes.
main, right? Oh, the first sentence, right, makes it pretty clear. I'm not sure who I interrupted there, but hopefully everyone said yes. Okay. So I guess that means our plant-eating animals are the pickiest. And then how do we know that? And so here we have an example and then kind of a fact, right, that goes with it. Okay. So I guess we would say, right, example one is cows and the fact that goes with that, right? So hopefully that makes sense. We have our specific example where we name the thing and then that fact, right, that provides the information that supports that main idea. Yes, plant-eating animals are selective in their sense of taste. So then what is example two? What specific thing? Okay, Brandon, no worries. Glad you could join us for a little bit. Hopefully this is making sense and you can kind of see what we're doing and stuff. But yeah, I'll try to get that sent out. Okay, so for example two, right, we have the koala. And of course, I don't know if I've ever spelled this word. Eucalyptus. Okay. So I think that's what they want. And then the last one I thought was kind of funky because it's not, and it's probably why it's at the end, but I'm assuming, and I would guess that you guys did this too. I guess example three is humans. Um, and then but we don't get a lot of details there, which I would have liked to have seen, right? Although of course, I guess we probably all encountered extremely picky eaters, I'm assuming. If you haven't had the pleasure of having to interact and try to accommodate picky eaters, you are a very fortunate person. But hopefully I think that makes sense for the most part. Okay. So hopefully everyone's feeling good about this. Hopefully you're feeling like you're able to pick out all of the pieces and see how they work together. Okay. Any questions or concerns? Is everyone feeling good about this stuff? Shouldn't feel hard, hopefully. Okay. Well, I think we're at a good